You shouldn't trust a word I say. Take it with a pinch of salt. Assume that my judgment is both outstandingly biased and grossly naive. Do not take advice from me. I have no idea where we should begin when it comes to how to be kind.
Many of us in the West absorb the Christian binaries of dark and light in infancy just by merit of living here. The mistake we make is to believe that they are mutually exclusive and all-encompassing. We're led to believe that one of these is right and the other wrong. Dark, however, is not necessarily evil. It's an integral part of life. To feel ashamed of your darkness is to deny your humanity. Our worlds and the stars beyond comprise of light and shadow. If we lost either, what we know to be true would be unrecognisable. The dark goddesses are the ones you must call on during times of personal darkness.
We start with Artemis.
Goddess of the hunt and of the moon, she of the wild, vengeful, dangerous, and often filled with rage, fiercely protective of her own, merciless with those who threaten the ones she loves.
A lot of retellings will assert that Artemis, defensive and tenacious, fixated on her independence, fixated on an alternative way of existing, rejected the trappings of love. And they're wrong. She loved. She loved as ferociously as she fought. I think it just depends how you define it.
She loved her friends with fire. But she grew up with a casual, unresolvable suspicion that she would never fall in love. Prophecies are very appealing in myths. We like to be in control, we like to know what's coming next, or we at least like to think that somebody knows.
It's probably worth saying at this point that it is highly possible that someone who asserts they have a suspicion about themselves, someone who is intent on self-mythologizing, may not be predicting the future. They may, in fact, be signalling that they've made a decision about themselves based on their past. A decision about themselves as some armour against tomorrow. A self-fulfilling prophecy is a prophecy no less. Artemis is a leader. She doesn't pull any punches when it comes to taking control. It was obvious from an early age. When she was 6, she was organising the other children on the climbing frames. When she was 12, she rallied her first protest, tying herself and a dozen other bewildered preteens to trees in the woodland opposite the school gates. When she was 16, not satisfied with being offered a place out of pity to play with the boys, she trained her own all-female football team, and in their first match, they easily thrashed the lads 4-0.
She was good at everything she did, and when she didn't feel she was naturally gifted in something, her insatiable competitiveness would drive her to the top regardless. She held every record at her school, from archery to long jump, cross-country to javelin. She wouldn't stand for being patronised because she knew what she was capable of, and nobody would dare patronise her because her tongue was as sharp as her shooting skills. The teachers recognised that this girl was born to scale any mountain she wanted, and that she had no problem with burning any bridge the moment she felt mistreated or saw injustice. Whether that impulsive, destructive fire was her flaw, or the very thing that made her a force to be reckoned with, was a question that would live without an answer for the rest of her life.
She may have been a high achiever, a born leader, but she was by no means a model student. Her track record for behaviour was a well-populated document. Her crowning glory, her proudest moment, was not an exam result. It was getting suspended for the final 3 weeks of her final year. Well, not the punishment itself, but the reason behind it.
After their final PE class, the captain of the boys' football team dared to set foot in the girls' changing rooms. Actaeon was the object of nearly everyone's affections, but at 16, Artemis was easily astute enough to know that doesn't give you a free pass. At 16, she was already firm enough to assert herself and ferocious enough to teach him a lesson.
How dare he? How dare he think he's entitled to this? A glimpse of these girls, her powerful, triumphant team. How dare he reduce them to compensate for something he is lacking?
She chased him out onto the school field. He was fast, but he couldn't outrun her. They scrambled down beside the brook that snakes across the back of the school grounds and into the woodland beyond. As Actaeon ran, scared and shaken by the sound of pure fury summoned from her lungs, he felt what he thought was a stitch, which turned into the feeling of a stretch, the sensation of ripping and regrowth.
He raised his hand to his brow, but what once was human had become the shape of a stag, and before he knew it, he was on 4 hooves bounding through the woodland.
She slowed, but only because she could see what was up ahead. The boys' football team running through the woods with the school groundskeeper in tow. Strictly speaking, students aren't allowed in the woodland unsupervised. It's a nature reserve. There are wild animals out here. Unpredictable wild animals. So, if you venture in, you need to be armed in case of danger. Maybe at the time she didn't know her own strength, her own power. But she never believed, even looking back, that what she did to Actaeon was an overreaction. In fact, when she looks back, she's proud.
It is one thing to wrong her, but to wrong the people that she holds dear, to her mind, is the greatest sin. And each time someone dared it, she was grateful. It made her skin thicken. It made her heart robust. It made her vow to protect and protect and protect the people she loves and the ideas she believes in with every ounce of strength she has. She knows she can use her anger, and she knows that is a gift. When Artemis was 4 years old, she decided she never wanted to get married. A bold stance for a child at nursery, but as each year passed, her conviction only became more resolute. By the time she was a young woman, she was known as the Virgin Goddess. But it's worth saying that the translation of the ancient texts are sketchy at best, and the meaning of virgin was more or less interchangeable with unmarried. So to make assumptions about her private life, well, it's just that, an assumption. When she grew up, as far as Artemis saw it, marriage would have meant a loss of freedom, not just in the usual compromises, but by requiring a completely different lifestyle with different constraints and responsibilities from the way of existing she had come to love. There's a reason that she's the goddess of unmarried girls. While little mortal girls may not be afforded anything like her freedom, just seeing Artemis's independence would allow them a chance to escape too.
She hates being tethered to the city. She prefers the mountains. She prefers the places where the sky seems big and the heavens are impossibly expansive, where you can see the meeting point between the soil and the stars. She's responsible for the moon and pulls it night by night through the darkness from east to west. If it's clear, she's granted a perfect view of the world below. From up here, she can see the curvature of the earth. The perfect tincture, she thinks, for putting things into perspective. And she often needs that. A moment in her day for silence and solitude, to quiet the wild fury in her head, to transform rage into clarity.
That's why she's never had a problem with her anger, because it is the exact thing that has most afforded her the sharp moral centre she is proud of. She may be turbulent, people may dismiss her as stubborn, she knows for some that makes her unpalatable, but she's grateful for her gift. She has the power to transform chaos into something sacred. Still, she decides it is sometimes best to keep her distance.
Artemis is also a goddess of transformation. Transformation finds its way into our worlds whether we are willing participants or not.
It is worth saying now that it is not necessary to change who we are in order to be transformed.
Love will transform us, and so will grief. We know that over these things us mere mortals have little control, but even our gods are subject to the hands of fate.
Which brings me to Orion. Orion is the most remarkable person that Artemis has ever met, and she isn't easily impressed. And what's more, the things that she recognises in Orion are the things for which she holds the highest standards and greatest respect. Artemis recognises things she thinks she's good at.
It begins on a perfectly clear night as she spots a figure chasing the moon across a mountain that only she has scaled. And what can she do with this but start a contest? And Orion, being cut from the same cloth as her, accepts. Task by task, they challenge each other. The first tasks are small and each takes their turn to set the next. Running, swimming, paddling, hunting, climbing, archery, hiking, with each task daring to go further. Simple races become day-long treks, become week-long expeditions, out on the river or high in the mountains, waking up with the sunrise and sleeping under the stars. The rivalry becomes a friendship. The friendship becomes love.
What's important in this story is that she would sacrifice the world to protect Orion with all of the fire and fury and rage her heart has to offer.
They spend a summer marvelling at the depths of their own gratitude. Artemis is in awe of the accident of finding someone with a soul that fits perfectly alongside her unruly, jagged heart. Orion, whose natural inclination had always been for solitude, is transfixed by Artemis. The things she had always feared made her company inhospitable have Orion completely spellbound. They each have a taste of companionship that they'd come to believe was not designed for them.
And forgive the cliche, but they weren't looking for completion. They weren't looking for anything. They didn't need this. And that is precisely what makes this so sweet. It's like the sunrise. Nobody needs to see it. But when you do happen to stir early, it's like you've been let in on a secret.
As August turns to September, they spend the last nights of the summer as the darkness consumes the daylight, lighting fires on a quiet beach, talking into the night, laughing, camping under star-scattered skies and swimming at dawn amongst ribbons of light rising over the water. And if the rest of their lives played out like that, they think, they couldn't ask for a much better run of it.
Artemis has a twin brother, Apollo. Apollo takes pride in the fact that he has always known Artemis, his stubborn, defensive, esoteric sister, like no one else. As far as Apollo can see it with this situation, Artemis has compromised on principles she has always argued to the back teeth to defend. Apollo doesn't understand why Artemis would change for anyone. In every iteration of her character, every reinvention of her soul, she has been resolutely independent.
And here she is, asleep on a beach with a person who has consumed her every waking hour for months. It doesn't make sense to him. It doesn't add up with what he understands to be true of his goddess sister. If we love people, we're protective of them. And given Apollo is incredibly similar to his twin, he, of course, thinks he knows best.
But he can just fuck off. Sorry, I've got very little time for Apollo. If he thinks the best way to defend her autonomy is by controlling her choices, he can get straight in the bin. Plus, I have it on good authority, he's jealous, so I question his motives. I think he's confusing his own selfish agenda with morality or integrity. I don't think Artemis needs, or more to the point, wants, anyone to protect her. But for the sake of completing the story, I will reserve any further judgment.
Apollo waits until Orion wakes. Orion wades out into the water to swim with the dawn. Artemis is still sleeping. And taking this opportunity, Apollo, god of the sun, shines the most divine golden rays of an early autumnal sunrise onto her closed eyes. She stirs and finds her brother sat beside her. And knowing the only surefire way to engage his sister, he challenges her. He protests that all summer she hasn't been out shooting with him once. She's just woken up. She's not interested. He says that she must be out of practice. He still hasn't piqued her interest. She knows she's not out of practice. He asks her to prove it. And those words are easy bait for Artemis. She picks up her golden bow and produces an arrow headed with the sting of a scorpion's tail.
Orion is a long way out now, at least 100 metres. Silhouetted by the sun, only a vague shape can be seen from the beach, some small shadow gently resting above the water. Orion is submerged, face to the sun. Apollo points to the small silhouette. He bets her she can't hit that gull sitting on the water. It's too far out. It's a dot on the horizon. It would be impossible. Without missing a beat, Artemis raises her bow, pulls back the scorpion arrow, and shoots. She has never missed a shot.
Apollo says nothing. He simply pulls the sun higher in the morning sky, revealing the face of the person his sister had loved, who only moments ago was alive. It happened so quickly, so swiftly, that Orion being dead does not make sense. The tops of the high mountains tremble and the tangled wood echoes with the guttural outcry of a goddess bereft. Apollo leaves before her pain transforms into rage, which it will, but not yet, not today. Artemis recovers Orion's body from the waves along with the offending scorpion arrow. She waits quietly, patiently on the beach for the sun to set. Their campsite turned sacred memorial, until through a burning red sunset, the darkness eats up the horizon. And in the calm of the night, she climbs into the heavens and delivers her love to the sky, to sit forever amongst the constellations. She places the scorpion in the darkness too, as far from Orion as possible. So when Orion rises in the east in the winter, Scorpius will retreat in the west. The two will never meet again. Orion will never feel that pain again.
Someone who is intent on self-mythologizing may not be predicting the future. They may in fact be signalling that they've made a decision about themselves. A decision about themselves based on their past. A decision about themselves as some armour against tomorrow.
Artemis had always believed that nothing was infinite. Not anger, not love, not loss, even the brightest stars burn out eventually. She'd always been hounded by the fear that everything she touched burned too bright, too quick. So only if she kept her distance could she avoid running the risk of setting the whole place alight.
Well, she thinks, burn it all down and leave me the night sky and a sunrise, because that's all I want.